Funny enough, when I was growing up, if you heard the word cannonball, you thought of a really funny slapstick movie with like Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise. But that's what most people knew about when I was growing up. I knew there was something else because of my dad's best friend, Doug Turner.
Are you aware that you just broke the record? Was that right? Yeah, 32:15.
At the time, I was 10, I think. We would often go with my parents to like their friends' houses, for dinners and whatnot. And we were there one night and he announced that they had done this. They had gone across the country and they'd broken this record and they kept calling it a cannonball. Over time, I almost thought I made it up because it was not known that this was a real race unless you were in those tight knit, you know, car communities.
This is Cory Welles, the documentarian behind the film 32 Hours, 7 Minutes.
I got so much joy just knowing that because it was like at a young age, knowing that like life could be very adventuresome outside the lines. I always thought it was this really amazing thing that like, wow, like life has these adventures if you just know where to find them or just, decide to do them. Because how crazy is to think this guy like raced across the entire country and never got caught.
And her documentary helped launch the cannonball into the 21st century.
So that was the beginning of me just knowing about it. Still like not really understanding at that age that there really were races until when I started being interested in doing film and always thinking like what's a good idea? Like what would be something interesting to do a topic on and then remembered, wait a minute, if that really happened, that's crazy and I need to know about it.
Welcome to the Cannonball Podcast.
I think it was right near Christmas. My parents threw a Christmas party for their close friends, and that couple was there. And I cornered Doug and I said, did you really race in this race and do this? And he kind of chuckled. He said, yeah. And I said, okay, wait, you and I need to talk. So I took a meeting with them. We met. They pulled out like a brown paper bag and a box, and it had newspaper articles and photos and some paperwork. And they said, here you go. And we were going through it and talking and hearing stories about it. And in the stack of photos there was a picture of a guy with this camera on his shoulder, like a huge camera on his shoulder. And I thought, there's footage somewhere. Well, it turns out the organizer of the US Express, his name's Rick Doherty, he's since passed, but he arranged for that footage. The guy I saw there that had the huge old Betamax kind of contraption on his shoulder, he had arranged it. He was the organizer of the US Express, which followed the Cannonball. He drove in the Cannonball, so he was one of the original Cannonballers. And when it ended, he was like, I'm not done.
After the end of Brock Yates's Cannonball in 1979, some cannonballers carried on the torch and established the U.S. Express, an unofficial continuation of the race.
They were like, no, we can still do this. So he continued it in 80, 81, 82, and 83, and he documented it.
The U.S. Express may have been short-lived, but it left a mark. In the last Express in 1983, Doug Turner and David Diem crossed the finish line in 32 hours and 7 minutes. But is it the same as doing a cannonball?
It's interesting. Some guys, I think, felt US Express was a more serious version. Other guys were like, it's a cannonball. You have a starting point, you have an ending point. You can take any route in between. It's same driver, same car. There's not much more to it than that. So, because if they say to someone, I ran a US Express, no one's going to know what the hell they're talking about, right? But if they say to someone, I ran a cannonball, there's a good likely some people may know, especially if they've seen the movie.
I think the U.S. Express embodies the same spirit as the Cannonball Run. So, Doug and David's record, legit.
Yeah, anyone go on the freeway and drive like 75 miles an hour, 85 miles an hour. But you got to go over 100, way over 100. and for long stretches. And you have to do that for a day and a half. And you have other things you have to contend with. I mean, it's a real life adventure that usually is only seen in movies.
Cory's documentary was originally about the legacy of the U.S. Express, but she ran into a problem.
I was really thinking this movie was about the old races and telling the story, but we ran into some issues along the way. Our conflict, we realized, was the old guys did not believe that that record was real. They thought these guys cheated, and there's no way that 32 hours 7 minutes was real. I needed to answer that question for me and for what I felt like was my family friend. Here he's like allowed me to have this story, and I've dug up all this like intrigue, like he cheated, it's not real, and what do I do with that? I can't say, oh, well, I know him, so he didn't cheat, but that's how I felt. Then there was this goal about, let's look and see, like, could this be done? Because if we could do it today, could that prove that it was possible back then?
My father was in the car import business. At one point, he showed me a video of a car driving across Paris in 9 minutes. It was a film called Rendezvous, shot by the French director Claude Lelouch. And I could not believe there's this car, going through all these red lights, driving as fast as it can at pre-dawn Paris. And I was obsessed with it growing up.
This is Alex Roy, student turned master of long distance racing.
And I was also obsessed with the Cannonball Run movie and the Gumball Rally movie. My father would, vaguely talk about those things as things he had done or wanted to do. And eventually he told me that had on his deathbed, he had intended to do the Cannonball, but did not because my mother threatened to leave him. And so, the combination of these legends and myths and that crazy rendezvous video, always stood in my mind as something like I'm part of, like I want to do that, like I have to do that, and kind of honor his memory, and I'll become a man that way, because there was no other way I could oppress him even after his death. I could never live up to him in the ways that I think would have made him proud, but in this one way, I could. And so I committed everything to breaking the record, which at the time of his death was the 1983 U.S. Express record of 32 hours and 7 minutes. And I didn't know where to start or what to do. And so I found, Brock Yates's book, which came out in 2002, a little over a year after my father's death. And I read it, and I'm like, and he said, of course, Brock Yates, it's impossible. No one will ever cross the United States in less than 38 hours. And Brock Yates is the godfather.
If anyone is insane enough to try another cannonball, massive changes in strategy will be necessary. Stealth would be the key.
He was still alive at the time. He ignored my emails. And I think his ignoring my emails was the final precipitating event that forced me to go do it. I didn't know if it was possible, but I knew that I had to try. Even in failure, there would be like nobility in trying. And the place to start seemed to be looking at the car rallies that were going on, like the Gumball 3000, which was the closest thing that there seemed to be to the Cannonball Run.
Gumball is a modern-day version of the infamous 70 road trip movies. Its present-day cast includes everyone from the famously well-off to the avid car enthusiast.
I went to the start line of the Gumball 3000 in New York City, and it was very clearly, these were not like the Cannonball people at all. These were people who wanted to have gone up, basically a party, city to city, stop, party, party, party. They seemed to have the money, and they were happy to connect themselves to the legend of the Cannonball via the quote-unquote Gumball, which never happened in real life. But this was not it. And so a year later, when the Gumball was going from San Francisco to Miami, I'm like, well, maybe if I go, I will find someone else on that event who, like me, wants to try the real thing.
We met because we were each dating people who were friends with each other. And my girlfriend I knew that I was a car nut and knew that Alex Roy's girlfriend had told my girlfriend that he was looking for somebody to go on this gumball rally with, and thought that I would be interested, and she was right.
This is Dave Maher, former Wall Street guy turned PCA national driving instructor.
That was in 2003, and Max Cooper was still running the gumball, and the trip on their second year in the U.S. was San Fran to Miami, and that was the trip I was hoping to get on board. So Alex and I met at a restaurant on the Upper East Side, and he shows up in a Porsche 993 Targa in like the purple color. I forget what it's called. I should know. And he was wearing his scarf and bald and his lightly tinted glasses. And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's a complete character / weirdo. And I didn't know what to expect. And so we sat at a restaurant called La Goulou, which I don't think is there anymore. There's actually one down here in Palm Beach now. But anyway, we sat there for a number of hours and talked about a whole plethora of things. And at the time, I had been doing Porsche Club events with an old 911 Turbo that I had, and been doing a lot of track events and driving on track, and was working through their driver's ed program. So he knew that I knew how to drive a car at high speed and be on track, and was a competent driver. And we kind of hit it off in a weird way. We were very different people. We still are very different people, but he's still a very good friend. At the end of that dinner, the conversation went in all kinds of different crazy directions, and we laughed a lot and had a lot of fun. And I was laser focused on, I need to be the guy that he picks to go with him on this trip. I guess he of all those other choices, I guess they must have been terrible, because he wound up picking me to go with him. And he was like, we're going to have costumes, and we're going to be the German police pursuit vehicle, and we're going to be Team Polizei. And I was like, yeah, whatever you say, whatever that I need to do to make sure that you pick me to be your guy to go with you, that's what I'm going to do. So it was sort of funny that that's how it turned out. But yeah.
We succeeded in pulling over maybe 7 other gumballers last night, because we're driving the German Highway Patrol Polizei pursuit vehicle. And with the lights and the logos, you would not believe how many other gumballers fall for that trick.
So in 2003, we did the gumball together, and we won the kind of coveted, I guess, if you will, Spirit of the Gumball Award, because everywhere we went, we were in costume and being complete idiots and having all kinds of fun.
We do 130. So this year's Spirit of the Gumball, car number 144, the police car, Alex and David.
We shall see you all again in another car and more disguises.
And so going on the Gumball 3000 in 2003 and testing out the equipment and the gear, it was very clear that with the correct equipment and a very laser-focused professional approach to police evasion, then it would be very easy to break the Cannonball record, removing the stickers and going across country alone. And so I did the Gumball the subsequent year in 2004 across Europe, and then a rally called the Bull Run in 2004, and then the Bull Run again in 2005 on American roads. And we began to perfect the equipment and the approach to driving at high speed on public roads, day and night. And I knew by the end of 2005, that we had a shot.
We had a trailer out online, and I had a web page, and Alex, he came across my trailer and reached out to me about being part of the, producing the film. And once we met and he got entrenched in the story, and knowing he's a driver, and it just, we became really, really close.
The final piece of the puzzle of the possibility was learning of the 32-hour, 7 minutes documentary being produced by a woman named Cory Welles. So I reached out to her upon seeing the trailer, and she came to New York and showed me footage and revealed that she had interviews with all the drivers from 1983 from the U.S. Express race, which occurred, which the true successor of the Cannonball.
And we just kept thinking, we joke about it actually, like, well, when we go to break this record, and then we realized that we were all kind of serious about it, that, well, I'd go, would you go? I'd go. And that is what it was needed to go across the country. And I remember, I think, having a conversation with him and saying, I think this is what is needed. And he was like, damn straight, like, we're going, he had it in his mind he wanted to, and I knew it was needed.
Around that time, I was offered a book deal by HarperCollins about my life in rallies and being the guy who dresses like a police officer and gets away with it. And I didn't have an ending to the book. Like I was like, well, what would the ending be? The ending logically would be, it had to be us trying. And I submitted the proposal to HarperCollins with the ending being we tried and failed. But in failure, we learned of the true history of the Cannonball and the Express.
We'd have to come to some resolution of maybe they did something that they're just not telling us. But I think in our heart of hearts, all of us deep down felt like we totally believed them. So if we didn't make it, that was our own failing, not theirs.
And so in December of 2005, Cory and I and my friend John Goodrich decided to get in my car, remove the stickers, but bring all the gear we had used on the gumball and go across. Yates's statement of 38 hours being the floor. Okay, I'm like, well, if we break that by at any amount of time, then the 32-hour, 7-minute record is in sight. And so we got across country in 34 hours and 46 minutes without a fuel cell, without a plane, but with everything else. And we thought what we were doing was crazy, but 34:46 was, almost 4 hours faster than Yates's floor. And so I was like, wow, if we had a fuel cell and a plane, we can break 32:07 without question.
It's worth noting that the 1983 record team was apparently the first to use a spotter plane to warn them of the cops up ahead. That trick stayed mostly under wraps until Cory revealed it in her documentary, and it was clever enough that Alex Roy wanted to try it too. After a successful test run, it looked like Alex, Cory, and co-driver John Goodrich had everything lined up to shatter the record. But the thing about Cannonball is, nothing is ever guaranteed.
In April of 2006, John and I and Cory, we assembled everything. We spent, an unbelievable amount of time and money planning it. My best friend Paul Weissman and Keith Baskett, 2 pilots, had a plane ready to go. And we left New York. And we got to Oklahoma City in approximately 14 hours. And our target time was 31 hours. 30 hours was what all the old drivers had said was like the wall. But we got to Oklahoma City in 14 hours, is about halfway, which meant a time of 28 hours was possible. And the car broke down. And we had multiple hours in the bank that we could still fail and break the record. But we spent multiple hours trying to get that car moving and finally had to give up in Oklahoma City.
It was the moment of the breakdown. When we broke down halfway across the country, that was like, I think there's a term they use in storytelling. It's like the dark of the night, like your lowest point, right? Like I felt it. I was like crying in the backseat of the car where I think it was Alex sitting there like, I'll go again. I'll go again. I'll go like right now.
I knew I was going to go again on the spot. When the cameras were rolling, Cory was shooting, like, we are going again. And John said, I'm not going again. This is crazy.
Alex lost his co-driver John and needed a replacement, but it couldn't just be anyone.
And over the years, I had spent a bunch of time with Alex. He had a big loft in New York City, and he would always be throwing late night parties. But he called me down one time. He brought me over to his computer and started showing me all these spreadsheets from the times from the original Cannonball Run. And he went down to the fastest time on record, which was 32 hours and 7 minutes, set in 1983 by David Deem and Doug Turner. And he said, and he showed me this movie this fledgling documentary that he was invested in called 3207, and a girl by the name of Cory Welles had all this old footage. He started showing me some original footage from the real Cannonball Run, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like totally a real thing, and people were doing this. And he goes, yeah, and I'm trying to break it. And I said, all right, cool. Like, good luck to you. He told me that his friend who had been doing the gumball with John Goodrich had done that run with him, and then they really went out to try and break the record. And his car had broken down in Oklahoma. John Goodrich at that time said, I'm not risking my life and career anymore doing this. Like, I'm bowing out. He said, do you want to go? And I was like, yeah. He said, no, take some time to think about it and you know, sleep on it and let me know. And, you know, it was before I made it to his front door, but before I turned around and said, I'm your guy, I'm in.
I replaced John with my friend Dave Maher, who was my original Gumball co-driver and a very professional driver, better than me. And we went again in October on Columbus Day weekend.
Alex Roy set out again with Dave Maher by his side and Cory Welles in the back seat. They left the New York Classic Car Club and planned to end at the Santa Monica Pier in hopes of finally setting a new coast-to-coast record.
The first part of the trip went very smoothly, and we were way ahead of all of our projections by the time we got to like Oklahoma. And I drove 2 back-to-back segments from Ohio to Oklahoma. So I drove 2 6-hour stints back to back. Well, we had the incident in Oklahoma where we almost got pulled over because Alex cut somebody off. But that actually didn't slow us down a whole lot. But he was cautious after that point. But then we got into some heavy weather that really slowed us down.
This says we're past the weather on the weather map. I'm having a hard time believing it.
That's bullshit.
And then we got into some construction. We were going like 35 miles an hour for long stretches, and we were just watching our average speed tick up. And at that point, it was like somebody playing a joke on us. Like we had done so well and made such good time for the first half of the trip that it was all just fading away. And I was losing hope at that point.
Maher just flat out said to me, we're not going to break it unless you put your foot down.
I was still not confident that we were really having to hustle.
And so I just took Maher at his word. Like, we're not going to break it unless I drive really fast. And that was in the last, few hours where I drove the final run.
So that final stretch, Alex was really pushing, and I was really pushing him to go as fast as he could. And that's why we broke the record by just over an hour and a couple of minutes. We did 31:04 and it was 32:07. So we broke it by an hour and 3 minutes.
The 2006 record welcomed the Cannonball Run into the 21st century.
Alex and I were a very unusual team in that we had very different approaches, and he was very much about studying it and being a student of it and what worked. And my thinking was, this is a race. Whether it's a race you're in on track or whether it's a race across the country, you got to be going as fast as you can when you can. And I think that's what breaks records. If you really want to go out there and break a record, you got to go out there to put your foot in it and just go.
You have to have someone that has almost complete disregard for getting caught. It's not that they have complete disregard for how to drive safely, but they can compartmentalize, like, I'm like helmet on, I'm in the race, nothing else matters in terms of me getting pulled over. They're caring about safety, but they have to be that lead foot. Alex was the lead foot when it was John and Alex. Alex was the one that pushed the envelope. John kept him in between the rails, right? But I think he felt more comfortable stepping outside and going fast and taking risks when he knew he had a John. But when he has a Dave, Alex now has to be that guy that holds it all together, right? I think they do it for themselves, because once you accomplish something like that, I mean, for me, it was like, I felt it in not just being there for that run, but finishing the film. No one can take that away from you. And these guys would sit there and say that when I'd interview them. They're like, you can't take this away from me. Nothing can ever touch that, because they did it for themselves. And if you're doing it for anything else, then I think you'd have a rude awakening afterward, because it'd be a huge letdown.
I wish my father could have been there to see it happen. And I felt like a different person, fundamentally like a different person. And that I felt the way my co-driver Dave Maher wanted to feel when I asked him why I should take him. He said something which better summed up my life than anything I'd ever said. He said that he wanted to do this because he wanted something money could never buy. And in that moment, and from every moment since that day, I have felt like I have something that can never be taken from me.
At the time I was working in finance, I was sort of unfulfilled in my job, and I was making a little bit of money on Wall Street, but, not a lot And it was just a little bit unfulfilled. And I just wanted this adventure. And I think I told him, because that was his big question to me. He said, why? And I was like, I just want something money can't buy. I want an achievement that, something that I've done that's, adventurous and fun, and something that I can sort of, hang my hat on as something cool that I've done. Got to the Santa Monica Pier, and we got there and it was over. I'm like, and now what? And Alex was still writing his book, and he didn't want to tell anybody that we did it. And I had signed a non-DA that I couldn't talk about it to anybody, but, it was like, I did it. And here I am. I have this sense of pride. I got what I was looking for. I got that thing that money couldn't buy. And I had this sense of pride, but I had to hold it in and couldn't tell anybody. And it was like, and that was a frustrating thing for me at the time when we finally let the word out. It was a big deal, and Alex definitely took the spotlight on it. And I was sort of the guy behind the scenes with Alex. He took the whole spotlight for everything. It was on David Letterman, and I was sitting in the audience with his mom. And
our next guest is the author of the book, The Driver, My Dangerous Pursuit of Speed and Truth in the Outlaw Racing World. You try that at home. Please welcome 7-time Road Rally champion Alex Roy. Alex, come on out here. I was right about this, 31 days, 31 hours?
4 hours, 4 minutes, yeah.
Wow. Wow. Would you do it again?
I shouldn't, no. I wouldn't tell anyone.
Yeah.
Alex, Dave, and Cory's record run proved to a new generation of cannonballers that the record could be broken again.
And I think what Alex and I did is show people that it was possible, which is why our record has been smashed countless times. And now people are like, oh, it's possible to do that? Well, let's just go do it. I think it's cool that we sort of started a resurgence on the whole thing. And I'm glad I'm part of the community. And, I get to do all the things. And what's weird to me now is, like, Alex and I are considered, like, the grandfathers of this, because we were the first ones that broke it in 2006. And I'm like, holy cow, I guess, yeah, it's like almost 20 years ago now. Next year it'll be 20 years, which is crazy to think about.
But in no universe did I ever imagine that a community would emerge of people who wanted to do it, not just for time, but in a variety of vehicles with various rules, and that they would take the bar for professionalism, organization, and commitment so far beyond what we had done.
Don't worry, we'll get into the last 20 years of Cannonball in the next episode. But as for this chapter, it's kind of a full circle moment. That spark Cory felt as a kid didn't fade out. It ended up inspiring a whole new generation of people.
I like feeling like without me done the documentary, this all may have died into the back of corner of history. And that, to me, was the whole reason of doing it, is that I thought it was just too important and a great show of people doing, like, being so good at something. They love to do it. It's like their passion. I have gotten so many emails and messages when the first film came out about how inspired they were about it, like how the film made them feel. And it was that same feeling I had when I was 10.
I was with family over Christmas, and my sister and brother-in-law's nephews on his side of the family, and my brother-in-law's side of the family, knew nothing about that. And I brought it up at the table at dinner one night, and it was like their minds exploded. And then I sent them a link to the documentary, and now I'm like the cool guy in the family, is instead of just my sister's nutty brother. And what's really cool for me is having grown up watching the Cannonball Run movie. Like I could never get enough of that. I'd probably burn out a couple of VHSs watching that back in the day. And now I can point people to my Cannonball Run movie. Like, never in a million years would I thought a world would exist where that could happen. So life is funny that way.
This series was created and produced by Mallory Keenoy. Executive producer Tom Keenoy. Voice actors Rob Reed via Voice 123. To the Cannonball community, past and present, thank you for keeping the legend alive and proving that tradition and responsibility can share the same road. Special thanks to our Patreon supporters for helping make this project possible. An extra shout out to the Cannonball Sun Solar Car team, the ones who first sparked this journey. Select archival audio and materials were used under fair use for commentary and historical context. This series was inspired by the many stories, films, and records that have kept the legend of the Cannonball Run alive for generations. Music licensed through Foxy Music. We wish you a Merry Christmas, CC by 4.0 Twin Musicom. Thanks for listening. You can find us at the Cannonball Pod on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow, like, and subscribe for more.